Hi, welcome to video number 3. This is called Being the Weirdo Always Alone. I did promise I would do a video about executive functioning, but I'm still having problems with executive functioning. So I had a long day and I just got the laptop out and I was like typing like mad, and this is what came. Being the weirdo always alone. We have been taught in this society to strive to be a part of a group, from baby groups to toddler groups to nursery to schoolyard games, always a group. Solitude was seen as weird and something to be concerned about. Parents would get hysterical because their child wasn't joining in, and teachers would be taking notes and encouraging the child who played alone to try to play with the others. It seemed that it was always forced and never just simply allowed. To think there was no area for children to feel comfortable in their aloneness, to explore nature and their own imaginary world, is a shame, because all my life I have tried to find my tribe and have felt rejected by myself for not enjoying the social interactions as well as the other children seemed to. My favourite memories of school were helping the nursery nurse to do art or tidy up the toys and put them all back in their proper place. Some say that to do that I was being a teacher's pet. But it was quiet inside, away from the noisy children in the yard. I had direct instructions. I knew what I was meant to be doing. It was a chance to recover from sensory overload, to reset my brain, so to speak. Plus, my nursery nurse, Mrs. Thomas, who was like Mary Poppins, was lovely. She was kind but had boundaries. She was direct but always from a place of care. And so I always felt safe. Most days I had no choice but to go and play in the yard. This was always a challenge, as I felt like I was on the outskirts looking in, on the other girls who seemed to play and laugh together at ease. I didn't understand what was going on. A huge part of me thought that I should have been socialising with the other girls, but at the same time I had a massive aversion to it. Most of the time I would spend by myself by a tree, being fascinated by nature, until the big loud bell started ringing, which woke me up from my daydream. In primary school, I always felt tired and confused, and more often than not was the last child to finish her work, and so was the last child to leave the classroom at home time. I remember my mum often had to come into school after all the other children had already gone to see where I was. Finishing my English stories, lost in either my imaginary land or in the land of facts, truth and justice. This one particular time, I was the last one left behind, trying to finish off my factual story about the mouse in my parents' kitchen cupboard. Just like a mouse, I went into great scrutiny with this story, and also wanted to make sure that my writing was neat and tidy. That was of utmost importance to me. I had embarrassed my mum by writing this story down, and I had no idea why. I guess back in the 80s, everyone used to care what the neighbours thought. And my family were very private anyway. Unlike me, open book. My dad used to tell me, I'm too open. You're too open with people, Nicola. But I can't imagine not being open. I've been closed this last year and a half to protect myself, and I've been numb inside, and I've been miserable. And I don't want to be closed. I don't want to be numb. So, yes, so I'm fine. My dad understands me now. He's fine with my openness. It's who I am. I was just innocently writing about the cute little tiny mouse who lived with us for a little while. Being the last to finish most of the time took its toll on me in the end. Without knowledge at the time, the process of starting to feel worthless took hold. Always comparing myself to others and wondering why I felt like I was lagging behind, even though I was doing the best I could given the circumstances. Because classrooms are very bright and noisy. The sounds bounce off the walls. children threw sandwiches at my head in the canteen, and some children didn't like sitting next to me because they didn't like the smell of banana sandwiches. So they slowly move away. I was like, oh, okay, fine. I never said a word. I kept quiet and held in all my emotions. I couldn't really process what was happening at the time, but now as an adult looking back, I can see that I was mostly overwhelmed. I was suffering from alexithymia. I could never identify my emotions as a child, and I'm not sure if most children did back then. And although I was quiet in school, I would be very hyperactive when I arrived home. I was like a different child, always mimicking famous actors and family members, telling rude jokes, which I'd copied off people, and generally being a bit too much. I can always remember internalizing everything, but at the same time felt like a robot. So as you can imagine, being suppressed, overwhelmed and confused at school with no time to process anything led to an explosion or a tantrum, as the grown-ups used to call them. Now I realise that they were in fact meltdowns. I get meltdowns as an adult, but I don't project them outwardly. I think women are used to, generally in society, women are used to being the oppressed, and where men can just act out freely, even their tantrums, you know, women seem to internalise everything and suffer in silence. You know, not all women, I don't want to generalise, but most of the ones I've spoken to anyway. Generally, I was a good girl in school, but being bullied, even for the way I bounced up and down when I walked, made me suppress my natural behaviours even more. Living in fairyland was my escape from reality. I felt safe there, but the truth was, although I felt safer in my own little world, I really wasn't. The amount of accidents I had was phenomenal. Hang on, let me just read that slowly. Phenomenal. The amount of accidents I had was phenomenal. Oh, nearly. I'll get there one day. Being too afraid to speak in class resulted in me bursting for a pee so badly that I almost wet myself. Finally, I put up my hand to ask if I could go to the toilet, to which the teacher replied very sternly, "Be quick." So I ran as fast as I could, slipped on the wet floor, collided with another child coming out of the boys' toilets, and fell teeth first on the concrete step, smashing my second teeth out. Once I walked past a metal banana boat. I was in a daydream. I turned to my left and it smacked me in the teeth again. I always had accidents regarding this area. I think it's to do with my throat chakra and not speaking up for myself and having feelings going on and not letting it out, you know. It's all to do with this chakra here. Another time I tried to catch a cricket ball and it smashed into my mouth. I was fielding and the cricket ball was coming towards me, and instead of putting my arms up in the air to catch the ball away from my mouth, I put my hands here. What an idiot. Boosh. I was always having accidents. That's probably another reason why I stay in a lot and spend a lot of time on my own or go out in nature where there's no traffic. You know, I'm a liability. I really wasn't safe at all. I realised that all children have accidents, but I was always living in another world, so less aware of what was happening around me. Lots of children who are autistic are also dyspraxic or have motor clumsiness, which makes sense as my mum used to call me Calamity Jane. All the accidents I had only staggered my learning even more. It is a shame because I loved science at school but could never hear the teacher due to the amount of noise and subtle bullying that was going on without the teacher knowing. I find it very interesting that being alone makes you a target for bullying. Eckhart Tolle talks about this in more depth in one of his YouTube videos. It's like society has stigmatized anyone who wants to be alone and labeled them as strange. Horror films always have a guy who spends all his time alone as the monster of the movie, or the weird person with the baseball cap who sits in the diner alone is always the murderer in the horror film. A perfect example of this is on the recent Netflix series, You. That's brilliant. Have you seen that? I can't wait for series 3. I'm really getting into that. Not all murderers spend all their time alone. Some are married with children and blend in as the perfect husband or wife. The Yorkshire Ripper got away with murder for quite some time without his wife's knowledge. But it's always the loner who gets the bad press. Anyway, moving swiftly on, back on track. Why are we pushed to be a part of a group from a very young age? Why were children at school forced to listen and learn whilst clearly they needed a nap? Why were we forced to play outside in the cold when some of us just wanted to sit in a warm, comfortable, quiet, dark room and have a nap? Why are we as society told to eat when it's lunchtime, sleep when it's bedtime, wake when it's morning time? No wonder I felt like a robot, dead inside. And just when you think you're out of the woods, you're made to join more groups outside of school. The brownies, guides, badgers, judo, karate. All my adult life, I've been trying to find a group where I feel normal. That's never going to happen. I'm accepting of not feeling normal, you know. I feel healthy and grateful to be alive. And to me, that's more valid than trying to fit in society's constraints. Now I'm almost 40 years old and I'm enjoying being alone to process my diagnosis, alone to think, breathe, be creative, learn who I am, accept how much I value and need my alone time, and to learn how to love myself fully. Feeling constantly rejected with no self-worth makes one slowly start to hate themselves. No wonder I couldn't be alone when I hated myself so much, when I didn't know who I was or what life expected of me. I was besides myself. My spirit didn't want to live in my body because I stopped caring about myself. For over 25 years, I've been trying to find a group where I feel safe, where I belong, and at age 39 years old, I have discovered that I'm much better off alone. Most autistic people are prone to feeling lonely, and it is sometimes torture, but I value my security, safety, health, clarity and sanity over feeling alone around people who are dedicated to misunderstanding me. I have never experienced trolling. No, hang on. Sorry, Mr. Line. I have taken comfort in my online autistic community, where I've never experienced any trolling. And like Facebook Marketplace, gosh, it's rife there. I don't sell anything on there now. We all have a mutual understanding and respect for each other, because basically we all feel the same kind of rejection and feeling like an outsider, like an alien, you know. Our qualities were never nurtured. We were like forced to live in a neurotypical world, to be taught in school, a neurotypical way of teaching. So most of our autistic traits come from that, you know, our natural autistic traits. Sometimes are a bit blurred. There's crossovers with things, you know. We've got comorbid conditions as well, because things like this cause mental health, and then there's crossovers and behaviours appear differently. Yeah. So, because of my online community of autistic friends, I feel grateful. I feel safe behind this screen. I can socialise from the comfort of my own home. Right, okay, that's all I got to say about that today. I'll probably write some more about being on the other side of a screen, because when I used to do gigs out in public, in pubs, rowdy pubs where there's lots of alcohol, I found it very overwhelming. But when you've drunk enough alcohol, it numbs all your senses and then you get in the swing of things. I used to sing for hours. I'd get paid for a 40-minute set and I'd be there for 2 hours, just like knocking all the songs out, all the cover songs out. I was exhausted. But when you're drunk, you don't feel your exhaustion until the hangover, and then the next day and the next day after that, the burnout period that nobody sees. So I'll write a bit more about feeling safe on the other side of the screen. It's interesting because when I used to do gigs out, I never thought I couldn't talk in between my songs. I felt so shy. I'd be like, right, okay, I'm going to do my first song, have a sip of beer, my hand would be shaking. Get on with the song, forget about the audience. I don't want to forget about the audience. The audience are there supporting you, listening to your music. You've got a gift, you've got something to share. And I felt like there was a big screen in front of me. And now here, there is an actual screen in front of me. But I want to connect with you. So I'm doing it in the only way I know how to do it, feeling comfortable and safe. Okay. I hope you get that. If there's anything you want to ask, feel free. Okay. Good night.